Hey folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com as well as Cardsphere.com, and we'll take a look at both just a little bit later on in the video. Today we are going to be playing with Matthew's Scam Shadow deck list, which I more commonly have referred to it as the Initiative Killer. And I'm not being hyperbolic for the sake of making a cool thumbnail or whatever. This deck is designed to absolutely mess up the Initiative deck list. And we've seen this on the other side of the battlefield a couple of times in recent videos, and it looks good. So why does this deck beat Initiative? Essentially, your threats are evasive in some way, be they flying or menace, and you are operating under an absolutely insane degree of mana efficiency. One of the problems with fighting the initiative deck is most things are just slower than it by a full turn cycle. But this is a deck that is playing Daze, Snuff Out as removal, Force of Will as a counterspell, Grief as a piece of discard. And then you can also bring back some of the stuff like the Grief at a discounted cost via Reanimate. So the idea is just you like wham, 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 hit your opponents so hard in those early turns. And while we don't exactly have an end game card advantage engine in the same way that a red deck might with expressive iteration, hopefully something like Baleful Strix in the mid game can kind of bring back some of that card advantage. And you're actually hoping the game doesn't go all that long. You are hoping that a large Murktide Regent or a large Death Shadow will like warp the game and that you kill your opponent in 2 or 3 attack steps once you're at the point where you're ready to really rumble in combat. This is a deck that I've been wanting to play, so I was very happy when the donation came in. Generally speaking, I'm not the biggest fan of blue decks, but my comment section lit up when I got absolutely destroyed by this deck, and I knew I had to play it. So, speaking of being an anti-initiative deck, like, some of the cards in the sideboard make it very clear what we are targeting, but there's also some fun things in the sideboard. The obvious mono white tech is like Tourach, which is just a protection from white creature that is going to scale up as you cast your Griefs and Thought Seizes or whatever. But then there's some other things like letting you become the Monarch and potentially even mill out your opponent. If your opponent isn't bringing in answers to enchantments or they don't have very many creatures to, like rumble in combat with, you can keep that stuff under control with your snuff outs or whatever, hold the monarch, and then you make up for the fact that you're losing all of this card advantage. Like, we very much are trying to take control of tempo, but there are some things that are going to help us as these games go really long. About the only other card that you might not be familiar with here is Powder Keg. Getting your upkeep, you may put a fuse counter on it. You can sacrifice Powder Keg to destroy each artifact and creature with mana value equal to the number of fuse counters on it. So conceptually view this as something similar to, but slightly different than engineered explosives in terms of utility. With that said, I think we're ready to go ahead and hop into the league here. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, and if you're a regular, throw me a like before this video begins. Is the easiest way to support my content for free, and I very much could use the support right now. I'm coming out of an algorithm slump, and I need to get my views back to normal numbers so I stop stressing out. All right, let's battle. All right, this hand's sweet. I'm going to be keeping it. There's a couple different ways to play it out. I think no matter what, I'm playing Flooded Strand. I think I'm supposed to Grief, pitch Thoughtseize, and then reanimate Grief. Just take 2 of my opponent's first cards and have Force of Will backing up Grief, or otherwise get to Murktide Regent in another turn cycle or so. Alright. Grief. Exile Thoughtseize. You got over there. Ooh. Urza Saga start is going to be a little awkward for me, huh? That Pyroblast. In some capacity, fan of this. So this represents a grindstone. I kind of need to take that. Represents getting Painter back if I take Painter. This represents my Murktide Regent or Force of Will not doing great things. This is a very unfortunate hand to be looking at here. Alright. Painter's gone. I am not a fan of this hand. I think I will shock. I think being able to play a Death's Shadow in the not too distant future feels somewhat important here. Yeah, I thought taking 2 cards from my opponent's hand on turn 1 was going to feel good, but it doesn't. Which, whew, that's not the strongest way to start off a video. Like, I'm not mad about it in any capacity whatsoever. Now my opponent will play out Lotus Petal so that they have Pyroblast up. Murktide Regent, you were supposed to be the chosen one. Alright. That is very, very much not what I'm looking for. My life total is under a huge amount of pressure. I am not just ripping through cantrips here to turbo out Murktide Regent. My Force of Will doesn't do Force of Will things. This is a bad spot. Like, I am very actively in trouble. Let's do some little punchies. Like, every bit is going to help here. I don't know that this is worth my opponent 2-for-1ing themselves here to stop this, but they might, since they're planning on whacking me with Urza Saga tokens to kill me. The better question is, if they Pyroblast, do I Force of Will back? And the answer is probably yes, just to put a card into my graveyard. Yeah, they do believe that it is worth it. So this will be 3 cards in graveyard if I Force of Will, and I get a redraw, or it's like another Death Shadow or something. Since the second Murktide Regent is almost certainly dead this game, I am going to take this line. And let's see what we pick up here. Another Strix. Not going to say that that was my top choice for a draw, but that at least does let me trade 1-for-1 with constructs twice. There's a pause, which means my opponent is thinking about whether or not they would prefer not make a construct token. Not scary, because it could mean they have like a painter in hand and are about to get a grindstone, and they're thinking about whether or not they want to attempt to kill right now. Okay. We are getting the artifact token. In case you think you're going crazy, I just bumped my volume up one tiny, tiny notch here. Okay. There is the grindstone. Opponent's probably only playing 2 of those, so it's not surprising to see them fetch it. There's 2 unknown cards over there. Alright, opponent is staying on the defensive. If they stay on the defensive, they can block my grief. Isn't a very good Death Shadow yet. So I think I'm just going to cast another Baleful Strix here. Alright, cool. That's a Brainstorm. I don't really mind that. Crash in with a Strix. And didn't see an end of turn Pyroblast on my Strix to just go wild or anything here. And just try to pivot immediately. Okay, cool. So my opponent probably doesn't have a Painter Servant in hand, because if they have a Painter Servant in hand, they just play the City of Traders and they have an immediate Grindstone activation that kills me. So their last card here may be a Simian Spirit Guide, because that's about the only way that makes sense. Okay. It's just bad. It's just bad. So none of these cards impact Painter or Grindstone, which is what I care about. Need to find a removal spell. Basically nothing else matters. Guess their last thing could be a Pyroblast. I shouldn't think about this too hard, because I'm just going to Brainstorm pretty much immediately anyway. I think I am going to keep both of these cards around in case I do decide to grief my opponent in an attempt to look and see if a Pyroblast is my opponent's last card. Yeah, I am going to go ahead and do that. A little tight to do. I think I will go ahead and do that. Go ahead and Brainstorm now. Snuff Out's real good. I think holding Snuff Out and Force of Will is quite strong here. And I get to play the Death Shadow next turn. My life total is a little precarious. Not the biggest fan of that. Don't know that I can attack here. I need to pay 4 life, which means I can't take a construct hit. I think I'm just passing the turn. Alright. Alright, so there's the city. I knew they had. Any combat? Nope. Gonna stare at each other until my upkeep, probably. Alright. Oh, this is actually really annoying, because that is still just going to mill my Death Shadow, which I wanted, but I needed Force. Alright, goodbye to Painter. Right, there's the Blast. And there's my Force of Will. Okay. Well, I mean, we take that. We take that for sure. This probably means that I can attack with a Baleful Strix safely. They'll chump block with a Grief if I need to. Alright. Get in there for 1. Opponent goes to 6. The attack may be unnecessary because Murktide is just lethal next turn. Snuff Out, Force of Will, Brainstorm, Brainstorm, Force of Will. Big Murktide Regent. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I would have lost the game if my opponent just made a different land drop. Like, they allowed me to brainstorm twice to dig towards answers to the thing that I couldn't beat. They maybe felt like it was just safer to wait a turn on their end. But like they had the scarier board on board. Like, their tokens were much scarier than my pair of Baleful Strix, I think. IDK. Alright. So unlicensed Hearse as a way to chip at their graveyard is reasonable. Hydroblast is pretty strong. Fatal Push is reasonable. I can do some of this, like, Brazen Borrower, Powder Keg, Ratchet Bomb type interaction stuff. I know my issue here is I'm not sure exactly what I don't want. Like, I just don't have very many reps with a Death Shadow deck that looks like this to know, like, hey, this is what I am supposed to be cutting. I also don't know how good my opponent is. So, for example, if they are a very good player, they might put their Painter Servant on black, which completely would negate my Snuff Outs. And that's kind of a huge deal. And I don't have a good read on what level they're at. They did something that looked like a mistake from my side of the battlefield in not going for it, but I don't know to what extent that's flavored by my own hand and knowledge of what I have. I definitely want these, and I'll kind of think about this stuff. I don't really feel great about Daze on the draw versus the deck that has, like, Ancient Tomb and Moxen and stuff. I think those can safely go. I don't mind Force of Will, despite the fact that it 2-for-1s me some portion of the time. Maybe don't need the full set. I think I want a Borrower in here. And then I'm unsure. I don't know about these. Like, they're okay. This is a weird looking hand. This Brainstorm is being asked to do so much. Like, this Brainstorm basically needs to shuffle away 2 reanimates. And after that, I may or may not have something to pitch to the Force of Will. I think I just mulligan this one rather than keep it. I think that one's just awkward. Yes, this is a much better generic hand. I don't think I'm in the market for the Force of Will after taking the mulligan here. Alright. Rhinestone occurs. We've got something that will hopefully let us fight against a Painter. Thoughtseize is a great draw. I think I will just go ham on my life total here. Ow. And then we'll do more damage to my life total with the Thoughtseize. Oh, okay. So I have taken a Painter Servant. We're maybe not gonna reanimate that one in this matchup, I'm just saying. Alright. Urza Saga's real good. Wasteland would be one of my better draws. Nope. So, am I dealing damage to myself? Assuming I cast Snuff Out, that's worth 4 life. That puts me at 11. This puts me at 10. Death Shadow is already live, and I can grow it later. Or if I need to / want to. So I think I'm actually just going to pick up a basic in case my opponent... maybe they're not going to moon me. And then I decided to get Watery Grave. After humming and hawing for a second about getting a basic land. Well, I mean, that was the one unknown card in their hand. They love you. We got Snuff Out for a token, Brazen Borrower for a token. Like I'm doing okay in that capacity. That's awkward. I have one unknown card. I save this for a brainstorm? I don't think so. Alright. Good call. Good call. Will be end of turn token. I'm just going to take this out immediately. If I were to wait on this and my opponent were to draw another Pyroblast, it would be quite awkward for me. So let's not put myself into the situation where that can happen. This is a really cool game. Or like matchup, rather. I would rather be in the other seat, to be fair. Like, very, very much would rather be on the side, the painter side of this matchup. But I think the gameplay here is neat. Opponent is trying to decide whether or not they want to nuke my graveyard to prevent me from playing a Murktide Regent, or whether or not like this is going to become a card draw. They are going to take out my graveyard. I think that's probably wise. Another Snuff Out. Sure, I'm probably hard casting Snuff Outs here rather than lowering my life total any lower. But I would like a piece of manipulation at this point. I don't know. If I'm willing to drop lower, I can just play Brazen Borrower in this turn cycle. But I don't think I need to be in that much of a rush to kill my opponent. Could be wrong, but it feels like one lightning bolt worth of damage is not going to be the deciding factor for whether or not I win this matchup. I'm going to hold that for a brainstorm. It'll be a little awkward if I draw a Force of Will and I don't have the 5th mana without taking some extra damage. And if I do shock myself, like, it'll be very telegraphed what I have. That's a Goblin Engineer. It is almost certainly going to eat a Snuff Out. I just can't let them bring back a Painter. But I'm probably going to play Brazen Borrower end of turn and get my clock going. Right, they're just picking up an artifact land so that they can just have good targets to weld in and out of play easily. That's totally fair. Would I be willing to pay half my life to put like a Death Shadow into play this turn? Yes, the answer is yes. I guess let's attack first. Let's just be a good player, and if my opponent's last card is randomly a blast, not give them the opportunity to... Ooh. The Hearse is pretty legit here. The other two cards are not good. If I take the Hearse, I might be able to get away with not getting rid of Goblin Engineer, but I just don't want to draw those next two cards. I think I'm going to shuffle and see if I end up with something better. Okay. So I can pay 2 life for a Snuff Out rather than 4 life for a Snuff Out. I think I'm on board with that, although it will make a future brainstorm worse. Boom. Okay. That's a shame. Like, if that had been an unlicensed Hearse and a fetch land, or an unlicensed Hearse and a cantrip, I think I would have just kept that. I have to be very careful with my life total, because while tapped out, like, I can pay 4 life for Snuff Out. Can't do much better than that. Let's get in for some dammies. And then we get to drop this Death Shadow, which is a much more real clock. I've got Hardcast Snuff Out available. This is 10 damage next turn, which is pretty good. 2-turn clock versus 5-turn clock. Kind of a big deal. Nice. And incoming damage. What am I worried about here? I guess, like, I'm worried about just a combo kill. So my opponent would need, like, a Painter Servant plus a Blast. They would also need 1 more mana, right? 2 for Painter, 3 for Activate. No, we just win the match and we start the video out strong. This deck feels good.
Today's video is sponsored by Cardsphere.com. Cardsphere is a service that allows you to buy, sell, and most importantly, trade your Magic cards with other people and game stores from around the world. As you can see here, they are doing a lot of business. They only take a very small fee, 3%, and if you decide you want cash instead of cards, you can also get paid out via PayPal for a small cut. P.S. They also have articles, so please consider checking them out.
All right. So I am on the draw here. I have a very reasonable looking opening hand. Um, my opponent tends to play like Mavericky decks, if memory serves. Like that indeed is going to continue to be the case. That's an interesting draw. I am probably going to grief my opponent pitching Baleful Strix as my starting point. Let's see what's going on over there. Okay, Mavericky things confirmed. Those are good cards. I think I let them keep the Dryad Arbor and Snuff Out a Knight of the Reliquary. Take Spirit of the Labyrinth so my cantrips remain alive. Yeah, I think I don't want my opponent to have a Spirit of the Labyrinth. Alright, then we evoke that. Fetch. I think I will do Watery Grave for at least the first one of these. Oh, holy moly. Yeah, that's totally fine. Let's put back Wasteland. Draw these two. No shuffle. Call it a turn. I have 3 cards in Graveyard already. Scalding Tarn can be 4. Force of Will can be 5. We can just go on the Turbo Murktide Regent plan, countering Knight of the Reliquary this turn, snuff outing the follow-up Knight of the Reliquary the turn afterwards. Yeah, pretty happy with this. Can wait till my turn to do this snuff out in case something changes. Alright, nothing's going to change. Well, I wanted to Force of Will that one. Snuff outing it has the same overall effect. But I just kind of got lost in the sauce there. Alright, I think this one is just an Underground Sea, though. I already have other ways to lower my life total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not the world's biggest Murktide Regent, but a 5/5 should be more than good enough to get the job done. Like a 4-turn clock is very good here. Alright, so that eats Force of Will. And I get to Thoughtseize something else out of their hand. And just do Murktide Regent beats. Okay. 5 damage. We are going to very much be using my... Ooh. Do I take the freebie? Spirit of the Labyrinth is unfortunately symmetrical. I think I just take the freebie here. Poor Dryad Arbor. Alright. It's down. I'm at 6. I've got a Death Toucher for an opposing creature that my opponent can play that rumbles in combat. Like, the unfortunate thing about not taking Spirit of the Labyrinth is, like, it's on paper a slower clock, but Dryad Arbor could just block Spirit of the Labyrinth anyway. Alright, Grief is not a fantastic draw, but I don't think that matters too much. Alright, good. Opponent didn't randomly have Scrib Ranger. A pro-blue creature here to block this would have been pretty devastating, and that could have been another way to play Scrib Ranger. Alright, that buys my opponent a lot of time. I'm now on a 4-turn clock. I don't think I pitch cast this Grief. It's possible my opponent's last card is another white card that they couldn't cast in the same turn cycle. But I think the Snuff Out is just a more valuable card. Alright. Blast Zone is technically an answer to Plague Engineer. Although it's a quite slow one. And we're chilling. Force of Will is a very bad draw here. Like, if I had a blue card, I wouldn't say happy with it, but content with it. As is, we kind of have this amalgamation of a very awkward hand. My opponent slowly works towards destroying Plague Engineer. And if they can destroy Plague Engineer while simultaneously wastelanding me, it looks pretty good for them. But unfortunately, Blast Zone does cost 3 to activate. So I assume they are willing to do that here. Alright, my assumption is correct. Goodbye, Plague Engineer. I am going to do a little bit of damage to myself to Thoughtseize my opponent. They almost certainly have at least one relevant card by now. Well, Assassin's Trophy can go after my lands, in theory. I only have... awkward. If I take an Assassin's Trophy now, I can take another Assassin's Trophy at will later. However, leaving my opponent with the Endurance leaves them with a roughly 4-turn clock. I know I'm about to get wastelanded, and the Assassin's Trophy going after another land is devastating. My opponent can't cast any of these spells right now, though, which is making this decision very strange. I think I'm going after the Assassin's Trophies here. I don't think I can beat 2 of those, but I'm not going to choose to grief immediately. I'm going to give myself the flexibility of a turn cycle to be able to snuff out if my opponent draws the green source for endurance. Collector Oof is totally fine. Yep, that is acceptable and not unexpected. Another land drop is cool. And now I kind of have to make this decision. With my opponent having another creature in play, I might just need to stop this from coming down. I could also just snuff out this and try to leave that stranded in hand. I don't think that's a good long-term plan, and I'm not closing the game super quickly here. Go ahead and grief, pitch, snuff out, take the endurance, and then hope to have force of will to protect a threat or draw multiple threats. I think my opponent is pretty favored right now. Not that it can't spin quickly, but I am legit nervous. Oh. I didn't really expect that. From my point of view, my opponent keeping one of those 2 cards is way more valuable than nuking my graveyard for a potential Murktide Regent. But they valued it differently. I mean, I'm happy with that, because, like, we just 1-for-1'd, essentially. Traded 2 of my cards for 2 of their cards, like, and it was going to be a ratio that was not in my favor in the first place. I am going to play this and play it tapped, so that I can cast something like a Brazen Borrower if I need to, or cantrip into something else relevant. This game is going to be extremely tight. Yavimaya doesn't do anything cool for me. How bad is this 2-drop for me? Probably Scrub-Ranger levels of bad. Fiend Artisan levels of bad instead. Yeah, that's... seems good. Like, it's a 6/6. Yeah, I am dead. GG's. Had a lot of decisions in that game. Enjoyed that a lot. So, knowing what my opponent has going on over there, with Fiend Artisan being something that they can do, I definitely like this sort of stuff. Probably play Cage to shut off the Green Suns. And then I have a handful of things that are playable. I don't think I'm into Virtue's Ruin, and I think my opponent has too many creatures for me to hold the Monarch for Court of Cunning. So that's the pile of stuff that I can be thinking about. Bouncing my lands when I'm also going to be getting wastelanded doesn't feel great to me. I think I want my Dazes out of the deck. That's going to start me off on these 3 cards. I think I want both Tourachs to help me wall Knights. Maybe trimming 1 Force of Will to do that. I think I want another Brazen Borrower, and I'm unsure what to cut. Maybe go down like 1 Thoughtseize. Unsure on the number of Force of Wills that I want. If I'm boarding out the Dazes, like, my blue count is just kind of innately getting lower. It's harder for me to force, but I do kind of want to sometimes have a tempo opening by having one. This is probably a keep, but I'm not, like, ecstatic about it. We try to get the Brainstorm to just smooth everything out. Alright, let's do a little bit of damage to myself and see if we can punch a hole in this opening hand. I believe I start by taking the Green Sun. It significantly slows down my opponent. So I'm going to wasteland their Savannah that they're going to play out on turn 1. And things get pretty gross from there. I'll start by Thought Seizing you just to make sure there's not a random crop rotation over there now or anything. It will get rid of your Knight, I believe. And then Fire off a Wasteland on your only green source. Next turn, I could kind of use Brainstorm to smooth things out. And, yeah, hopefully we just, like, find a creature. Ugh. Alright, Brainstorm. Hey-oo. Combo, question mark, question mark, question mark, combo. I will be putting back 2 lands of some variety here. Already being at 14. I think I will just pick up a regular land here. And this is not what I want to reanimate, but I think I just take this and assume that growing it to a 6/6 lets me just kind of rumble in combat in a pretty respectable way. Alright, cool. You know, that's one of the first times in recent memory that I feel like I've just obliterated a game with a single Wasteland. That doesn't happen as much anymore. Alright, on the draw, do I want some sort of, like, Ratchet Bomb effect or anything like that? I don't know that I do. I think I like my configuration. This feels unexciting, but totally reasonable. And, oop. No Dryad Arbor play this time around. I think I will just be playing a Misty and passing here. I'd like a piece of discard so I can take one of my opponent's cool things and reanimate it. Okay. Yeah. I'm not gonna Brainstorm for a Force of Will to try to beat that, I don't think. I was waiting to pay costs on some... Okay. Alright, we're just gonna always yield to this Carpet of Flowers, because there's gonna be a lot of those triggers. I don't think I want to end a turn Brainstorm here. How much can I hurt myself right now? 6? Put me to 14. I don't really want to give my opponent mana, but I also kind of think that I need to cast a spell in this turn cycle. But I can cast a Brainstorm on my opponent's turn as my spell. And if I'm in the situation where I can wait until their end step to cast something, I don't give them that immediate +2 mana. I don't like seeing that Blast Zone. Yeah, that's fine. Carpet of Flowers, doing air quotes nothing as of right now. Then let's go ahead and fetch. I will be doing a decent amount of damage to myself in all likelihood here. Cool. Probably don't need the second Murktide Regent. I probably don't need the second Thoughtseize. I am going to go a little bit deeper in terms of reducing my life total here. Well, Murktide Regent came back anyway. Let's start on a Thoughtseize here and just get a feel for what's on the other side of the battlefield. Very respectable cards. Snuff Out destroys a non-black creature. This is relevant for Fiend Artisan. I don't really have a good answer to Fiend Artisan right now, and my opponent has so much mana to funnel into it. I probably just have to take that. Unfortunate, because that Assassin's Trophy is good against Murktide Regent in particular. Going to go ahead and snuff out this creature and clear the board. I think I drop a Murktide Regent this turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It does unfortunately clear the whole graveyard. So if I do this, my opponent can make black mana with one of the Carpet of Flowers to get rid of this, is what we're seeing. 6 mana, 2 of it goes towards killing Murktide, then I get Wastelanded. My plan is going to involve playing a Death Shadow, letting my opponent Blast Zone it, and then reanimating my Death Shadow. We're not going to be reanimating a Murktide Regent. Alright, pick up a basic after Assassin's Trophy. Oh wow, they're going for Horizon Canopy and taking a redraw this turn. And that's fine with me. Alright, cool. We dodged them finding a threat, which is sort of a big deal. Yes. Absolutely yes. Cast with Kicker. Could see like an Endurance in response as my opponent's last card they have. Or it could be nothing. Okay. Alright, that's a Bayou and a Wasteland. Very nice. Now let's go ahead and fetch. Okay. That is, I guess what this mana base does. And my opponent can choose whether they're getting rid of Death Shadow or Tourach with their Blast Zone. Oh, this league's so good. Okay, they are valuing getting rid of the Death Shadow because they have less time to answer that. I get to bring that back for 1 life and 1 mana, though. Oh, it's just a land drop from my opponent, which means they are taking a good amount of damage. Wasteland's pretty much irrelevant here. So here is the attempt on the attack. My opponent will Blast Zone this. Are they going to Dryad Arbor block and then I'm punished for not playing out Wasteland? I am. Alright. That's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm fine with just playing a 3/3 flyer. If I want to lose a touch more life and put another creature into play. No, I don't want to put another thing with CMC2 into play. I could put a Dryad Arbor into play. I don't think that's exciting. I think I'm just going to play this out as a safety net. So 5 from my mana. 6, 7. Play a Murktide Regent just as a 3/3 flyer. And that's good enough to win the match. We're now 2-0.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, which is a deck hosting website, and I'm really a big fan of using these for my EDH decks in particular, because you can use these little blue bubbles to keep track of which cards you do and don't have when you're starting to build your decks. And if you have one, but not that exact art that you have up, it'll be in a gray bubble instead. And this has just been so convenient as I kind of sort through my collection and figure out what I need to purchase for my decks. All right, this is round 3. I'll be keeping my hand, and we'll see whether or not something awkward happens. This is a really good hand if my opponent's mana base is wastelandable. My opponent tends to play control decks. Okay, good. They're initial. Oh, okay. Fuck. All right. I very much kept this hand not expecting my opponent to play a turn 1 threat. Damn. Okay, I got. I expected some control, like, Miracles 4-color control pile, not Delver. Wow, this hand is very bad versus Delver. I'm not wastelanding my opponent now that they have an onboard threat. I will take 2 to Thoughtseize, though. Okay, so it looks like we are a Rug Delver sort of deck. A lot of counter magic. I can take the Brainstorm, hope they get stuck on lands, and that leaves Pyroblast and Murktide Regent branded. I think that is a somewhat realistic path to victory. Like, try to have them miss this land drop, then wasteland the trop, and find a Snuff Out or something for a Delver, beat the Force of Will with my own Daze. I think leaving them with the Brainstorm is just too scary, both because I lose the information and because it will invalidate a lot of cards in my hand. I do technically have a Murktide Regent that can eventually trade with a Force. No Delver flip, unfortunately. Probably means a land, yeah. Alright. That's a good news, bad news situation. Oh man, I so don't want to be attacking my opponent's mana. But it feels like that's kind of the only thing that I can do right now. Yep. Float your mana. And then we'll just go to your turn, see if the Delver blind flips. Okay. So much counter magic. Gotten harder to get rid of that Delver. I have perfect information about my opponent's hand. This is a next turn thing. This is a next turn thing. So let's take out that trop. I'll take 3 damage from my opponent's attack step. And hopefully resolve Baleful Strix. Nice. With a Daze backup for the Force of Will that I know about. Did I use another? Oh. Huh. But I had 2 Underground Seas. Apparently not. I'll double check the deck list later. I don't think I want to take 2 here. Alright. I'm going to do this. We're going to cast this Strix. This Force of Will. Pitching Force of Negation is good. Now I'll Daze the Force. I'm going to bounce my Underground Sea so that doesn't get wastelanded. Alright, nice. Fuck. Force of Will, pitching Murktide Regent. So,
Now I will attempt to resolve another Baleful Strix or a Murktide Regent next turn. Okay, nice. We dodged red land, which would have been quite scary there. Oh, and Snuff Out? Cool. Spell Pierce is a thing. I want to play Snuff Out around Spell Pierce immediately? I don't really want to go to 3. I think the answer is no. I think I'm going to do this and just play a Strix. Oh, and I found a Force of Will. That is very good. I now have protection against Pyroblast. Although I would prefer to just cast this Murktide Regent. Do I want to force that? No, I'd rather just play my own Murktide Regent. Alright, no attacks from my opponent. I don't actually have that many cards in my graveyard here. Let's try to fix that. Oh wow, Reanimate is good. I'm not shuffling away a lot of this stuff, though. Let's put back a Snuff Out and a Watery Grave. My life total's kind of tight here. Got a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright. I am in a pretty good position. I don't think I need to Snuff Out here. No Delver Flip. Probably means land. That's actually a little bit awkward for me, isn't it? Now my opponent has Pyroblast. Sorry, has Spell Pierce up. And Force of Will to take Spell Pierce. Or I can just take 1 damage and reanimate a Strix. It's better to take 1 damage and reanimate a Strix. Alright. Oop. So this Snuff Out is kind of off. I could have played my previous turn better. But now, putting myself into lightning bolt range. Alright, opponent is just going for the Spell Pierce to attempt to tap me out. It's fine. Alright, so Watery Grave, obviously tapped. Pass the turn. I can still technically Force of Will. Alright, no Delver Flip. Actual Factual Tarmogoyf. Think I let that resolve and just snuff it out. Like, I have 2 answers to creatures. There's 2 creatures in play. Oh, yeah, we will trade. We'll absolutely trade. No chances here. Absolutely no chances here. Let's just take that out. I'm at 2 life. I can draw some very big Death Shadows. I will just snuff that out. I will continue to trade 1 for 1 with my opponent's cards and save Force of Will as the safety net for when things get real bad. If I don't have to pitch cast Force of Will in the next turn cycle, I guess I actually should have let my opponent go to their upkeep. That's a Murktide Regent. That is going to get Force of Willed. I think I Force of Will pitch Brainstorm. And then if I draw a land, I can potentially cast this. Okay, cool. So I can't pitch cast this Force of Will. Like, I am planning on hard casting that later. Ponder now, see if I can find like a secondary threat or something. Wasteland is okay. I can knock my opponent off of red in the short term. I think I accept this, despite the fact that the third card down will be a dead draw. No shuffle. Wasteland. Take out Valk. Cast a very large Murktide Regent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, I have an 8/8. I have a 2-turn clock. I attack for 8, and then I attack for lethal. If my opponent's top card is a lightning bolt, or they find a lightning bolt, that is very bad for me. But otherwise, this should do it. Battle for 8. Lethal on board. Did I play this game well enough to get the W? That's the deck thinning for lightning bolt. Alright, I made enough of my decisions correctly to win that one. And I'm not going to claim that I made all of them correctly, because it's very much not true. Alright. Purse seems great. Hydroblast, reasonable. I didn't see EI, but I expect it's in there somewhere. Don't think I want to mess around with Court of Cunning here. Fatal Push is great. I will probably play removal and removal adjacent things in large numbers here. I don't think I'm the biggest fan of my counter spells. Like, I feel like my opponent is going to be the better counterspell deck with the red elemental blasts and pyroblasts that they're going to have access to. So, like, if I can choose to not lean on these as hard, that's probably good. I will go Dazes out or push Plague Engineer, Hearse. I think I'll board in a Ratchet Bomb. And I don't necessarily want 0 Force of Wills. Because, like, I want to be able to answer some random juke like a True Name Nemesis. Like, I want to be able to have some outs to that. Although maybe Ratchet Bomb and Powder Keg are those outs. I just decrease the power of my opponent's red elemental blasts significantly. Sure. I'm not super confident with my boarding with cantrip decks. This is an okay hand. I always feel like my hands are unexciting and then, like, I'm winning with them, so that's a thing. Am I interested in griefing and wastelanding my opponent? Probably not. I don't think, in theory, wastelanding my opponent is going to be, like, air quotes, the plan. I think this is going to happen at least once this game. I'm going to go ahead and take the damage now. Oh, believe I will take the Tarmogoyf here in case I draw a reanimate. So maybe I'm supposed to just take my opponent's deck manipulation. Alright. Opponent would have found more deck manipulation anyway. And see how quickly this Murktide can get powered out. I just think I have to take the Tarmogoyf. Just letting them play a second threat on turn 2 just feels so very spooky. I'm at 12. This probably has to be an Underground Sea now. Fuck, no! Knew that was a possibility. How many Force of Wills are currently in my deck? 0. So then that occurs. Let's ponder. Yeah, more Strix is great. No shuffle here. I think I go ahead and grief away the suspected Murktide Regent right now. Yep. Leave my opponent with Brainstorm and Delta, and then I'll play Underground Sea into Strix next turn and play around a Stifle. And I'm not going to say that I'm stable, because I very much don't feel stable yet, but this is a strong step in the right direction. Brutal. Okay. Like, I can brainstorm into some answers next turn, but life's pretty bad. Alright. We fetch into clear, or do you like those cards? Oh no, they're good cards. This is going to put me to 5. I do not have much time. Alright, there is a follow-up card. That just means the other one is Lightning Bolt, otherwise they would wait for me to, like, potentially fetch. Okay, I mean, that is what it is. Delver did Delver things. So how am I feeling about these griefs? If I'm willing to go away from, like, the grief reanimate stuff, I could bring Force of Wills back in. I don't know that that's better. I'd play a Court of Cunning when I'm on the play, but that feels very risky. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep the griefs. Like, keeping the grief lets me operate under a smaller amount of mana if I do end up getting stifled. I think I'm the more controlling deck here. I'm trying to push this game to go long, and I think grief is better than Force of Will in the early turns of the game. Yes. This hurts me a lot, but these sure don't get red elemental blasted. They don't care about stifle. Alright. Fetch, absolute shock. Thought sees you. I am at 15 already. Oh, wow, life from the loam. Take Ponder? I think take Ponder. Just leaves me with perfect information. I am a big fan of. My opponent will have one unknown card. I think I just take this opportunity to attempt to fetch. If their one card is Stifle, their one card is Stifle. It was not Stifle. Brings me to 12. I am going to just kind of force my opponent's hand on the Lightning Bolt here. Okay. Alright, the draw was Pyroblast. That's fine. So I know my opponent has a Lightning Bolt. I can go to 10 here. and my Death Shadow are a little bit in the range of just like dying to a lightning bolt. So I think I just kind of chill and then cast the Plague Engineer. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna cast Plague Engineer. This might bait the lightning bolt. Don't know if there's a difference between naming human and wizard in the deck's current configuration. I think no. Alright. Bolt is now out of the way, so Death Shadows get to do Death Shadow things from here on out. Oh, nice. So there's attempt 1. And there's attempt 2. Alright, both are in play. I maybe should preemptively fetch. Like, neither one of these is getting lightning bolted, because if I pay the 1 life, they're both 4/4s kind of immediately. But maybe to better play around Stifle, I'm supposed to just grow them to larger threats immediately. Oh, that's fine. Take that out of their hand. Opponent has a pretty big Murktide Regent coming. I don't currently have great answers to. I think I am still supposed to do this, though. I just need to... Oh, that's real good. Do I pitch cast this Grief so that it can't get dazed? Or think about that for a second. Like, Daze happening is a disaster here. But if my opponent plays like a Tarmogoyf or something next turn, they can block one of these, and then I still have lethal if I play 2 Grief, if like the Grief stays in play. I think that's the nod to do this. Alright, cool. Alright, that will take Murktide. I think that should do it. It would take a pretty crazy brainstorm here to beat me. Okay. Did I set up myself for ultimate doom by prophesizing the advent of Brainstorm? Alright, cool. I believe that brings us to 3-0 now. This deck is really good. Like, even accounting for the misplays I'm making and my unfamiliarity with sideboarding with this, like, this deck is objectively very good. Alright, round 4, we're 3-0. I have a reasonable opening hand with a decent amount of flexibility. I don't have a fetch land for my Ponder to make absolute best use out of it, but I think things probably work out. Alright, we are playing against a Once Upon a Time deck of some kind. Hopefully not elves, because I'm very bad if counterspells don't work. I am not willing to force a Noble Hierarch here. I think I'm going to try to hit a 3-drop with Daze next turn. Probably means not getting wastelanded in this first turn cycle. I feel about Grief. I don't know that these are the cards that I'm looking for here. Like, there's such high upside to me finding like a Snuff Out, or well, I can't find a Snuff Out actually after leading on Island. So play around Wasteland. Alright, so I am, if I want, going to have the opportunity to Daze something here. Yes, Daze. Daze. Absolutely Daze that. No way is that happening. Alright, a Death Shadow is okay. My opponent gonna have Wastelands after showing me a White Plume. Could still very easily be a either Reliquary deck. Thinking about whether or not I want to do damage to myself here and open myself up to a Wasteland. I don't think I want to open myself up to a Wasteland before I have the opportunity to play a Baleful Strix. Again, I'm not the most interested in Grief with the Force of Will in hand already. Holy moly. Alright, I have the late game covered. So I can Force of Will another initiative creature. Oh, fuck, that's bad. We can try to find a Wasteland for that. I assume that gets like a Knight of the Reliquary type card, and I assume I just say no to that. And hopefully I can outpace some constructs, or alternatively find a Wasteland. Are my powers working for good today, instead of for evil? This is kind of wild and different. Now, unfortunately, I'm a little bit behind the mana curve, and I'm not doing a great job of hurting myself for Death Shadow purposes. But assuming an initiative creature doesn't hit play this turn, and I can get my Baleful Strix in play, I'm going to feel really good about this game. Alright, new land drop from my opponent after thinking for a little while. And that's a Stone Forge. I can draw discard spells to help out with that. But Caldra makes my Death Shadows look significantly worse. And thinking about my sideboard, I'm not sure that I have very many answers to, like, resolved equipment. Alright. So, choice time. I can play Baleful Strix, and if my top card is one of my 4 Griefs or a Snuff Out, I answer the Caldra, or I can try to win through the Caldra. I can create a 7/7 Murktide Regent, which kills my opponent in 3 attacks. They get the first attack. But if my opponent hits me, then these Death Shadows are on, and it becomes much harder for the Caldra to actually attack. There's 7 or 8 in 47 versus just playing Murktide and hoping it works out. I think I play a Murktide and hope it works out. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not saying we're all in on Murktide Regent, because I think that's not quite true. But it's mostly in on Murktide Regent. Oh. Yeah. I wanted/needed dodge there. And I didn't. That's a nice plains. Yeah, I like that. So this is now 7 damage due to double Noble Hierarch. All my opponent's stuff is on board. And because of the Swords to Plowshare specifically, I'm not immediately in Death Shadow range, which is a surprisingly big deal right now. Alright, yep. Surprisingly big deal. That Swords to Plowshares was rough. If I take 7, I go to 11. Opponent can chump block my Death Shadow so easily. Don't think this Watery Grave is the difference between life and death for me in terms of turn cycles. I think, like, I get hit 7 for 14 and then dead, so I don't think this 2 damage makes a difference. Accordingly, I'm going to just play this to make my Death Shadows bigger on the off chance that I find a way to steal this one through combat damage, although I'm finding that pretty unlikely. And I got glutted on Death Shadows, and the Daze timing here wasn't the best for me. So I'm at 9. Alright. Death Shadow number 1. Death Shadow number 2 was a fetch Underground Sea. Put at 8. Take 7. Be at 1. Yeah. There's only one Underground Sea. Is there any conceivable world in which I take 2 more damage? I would go to 6. Aldra is attacking for 7. I would need to throw away a Death Shadow to play another Death Shadow, so the answer is no. I just do this tapped. I think I have to get in for a point of damage here to have any shot. I don't know how I win. I think it involves drawing a Brainstorm. Okay, sure. Another piece of equipment. Oh. I can't daze that because my opponent has Noble Hierarch up. Alright. So. This is not great. So, my Death Shadow gets exiled, and then my life total goes up to 13, meaning that I lose another one of those. Now my opponent has 5, 8, 9. I'm not technically dead, but I can't see a path forward to victory from here. GG. I mean, maybe I could have played that one differently in getting a grief down. At some point, I rejected a couple of griefs because I was looking for other things. Like, maybe that's just on me. I like Tourach. I like Virtue's Ruin. I like Plague Engineer for the Mana Dorks. I like Fatal Push for the Mana Dorks. I'm going to assume that Unlicensed Hearse is good. And then I have other things that kind of fall into the optional category. I don't think I want to be playing Daze against my opponent's Mana Dorks. I think the Dazes end up being awkward. I like my Force of Wills, though. Let's go those out. These 6 cards are mandatory. A lot of times my plan is going to be Grief or Force of Will, an initiative creature, reanimate an initiative creature, and that just wins me the game on its own. I might not sideboard too awful much beyond this. Is he going down a Death Shadow or two, given that I am boarding in kind of 4 more threats, and my opponent has white removal that really hits Death Shadow hard? I think I also need the Brazen Borrower in here. Can I go down to 1 Death Shadow reasonably? Is this enough creature density versus the deck with Source of Plowshares and Solitude? Might not be. I'm going to hope it is. I have so much better opening hands than this in this matchup. Do I mulligan this? I think on the play I can keep this. I would mulligan this on the draw. I just think between the next draw step and I was maybe supposed to play Tap Watered Grave there. I should have thought about that for a quarter second longer. Anyway, I think between my draw step and a Brainstorm, though, that I'm happy enough. Yeah, I wish I would have tapped. Alright. I am fine shocking immediately. I believe that I do want to Brainstorm here. Like, finding some discard, for example, is very good. I think I'm actually just going to throw back both Murktide Regents. I want them, but I'm not quite ready for them yet. So let's do that. I will go ahead and fetch. I'm just going to grab an Underground Sea with this one. Going to Grief, I think pitching Baleful Strix rather than Snuff Out. See what's going on over there. That is mighty interesting. I can reanimate a Grist, right? As long as it isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature token. Yeah. Reanimating a Grist seems cool. Then I answer Stoneforge with Snuff Out. And Knight with Grist. Alright. Get evoked. Reanimate a Grist. And go ahead and plus this. Now this is the portion of the game where I'm ready for a Murktide Regent. That approached much more rapidly than I was expecting it to, which I am honestly quite happy about. Oh wow, we are going for swords on the token to pave way for Stoneforge Mystic. Absolutely. Alright, so there's Heath. Gives my opponent access to all their colors. Stoneforge happens. Finding a Cauldron, and I will snuff that out. I guess I can Ponder first. This Ponder is actually really good because of Grist. Drawing Baleful Strix is cool here. I am on board with this. Go ahead and just plus Grist. Put those instants and sorceries that I know that are there into my graveyard. I'll fetch. I think I'm healthy enough to just do one of these now and save the basic for later. Go ahead and play out my Strix. Nice. Snuff out a Stoneforge Mystic. And I'm pretty far ahead on board. Grist Ultimate is in exile or graveyard. Each opponent loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Well, that's not going to be a huge number. Okay. We're not playing out Knight of the Reliquary into the known Grist, which is reasonable. Go ahead and play a Strix. Oh, Fatal Push is a great pickup. Like, legitimately very, very strong. Like, especially with the fetch land backing it up. I don't have a fast clocker or anything, but, like, it will scale. I'm happy enough with this as is. And I very much can take and hold the initiative if necessary. Yeah, Once Upon a Time is fine. Anything that is using your mana in a way that isn't impacting the board is a massive win for me. Yeah, they're just using it to make a land drop. That's fine. Yep. Alright, good stuff. A reanimate. Yeah, I'll probably end up playing that. Like, my life total is a resource here that I get to leverage because I am so far ahead. I can take a Stoneforge for 2 life, just as another 1 power thing, or I can just take a Grief for 4 life. If I take a Grief, I can no longer cast a Snuff Out for free, which kind of matters, but only kind of. I think I just take this, and let's see what my opponent does about it. Concedes. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, the plan of counter one of my opponent's things and reanimate it was good, although I wasn't expecting to reanimate Grist in particular. Did feel like I was threat dense enough there. I wonder if I should go down something that does damage to me when I'm on the draw. I also a little bit wonder if I should play like a sort of cunning, assuming I use Griefs and Force of Will to get through the early game. I don't have a lot of gas for the mid game. Like Court of Cunning as my own wrist. Pretty reasonable, but Court of Cunning throwing Knight of the Reliquaries to scary size isn't exciting to me. Play Cage. I don't think I want to play Cage when Reanimate is so important to my like meta level strategy here. I think I'm happy with this. I am fine with this opening hand. It has a decent amount of flexibility. And a Dork. I can counter that if I want. Just try to keep my opponent off of 3 mana in the short term, but I think I'm going to let that happen, and then just use Snuff Out and Force of Wills to answer the cards that I actually care about. I think I'm shocking myself with Watery Grave in this turn cycle. Think. So that Snuff Out is on for my opponent's turn. Maybe I don't have to expose myself to Wasteland until turn 2. Yeah, I think that's correct. Alright, let's Ponder. Those are very reasonable cards. I can take a Baleful Strix and a Snuff Out from this. It hurts me a lot to do so. Probably doing like 4, 5. That's a lot of damage to myself. Maybe too much damage. Let's actually shuffle this. I think Reanimate is just so strong here if I find it. Cool. Yep. Alright. Hard paid off for that. So now like my opponent can play like a White Plume Adventurer or something this turn. I can Force of Will it. And then reanimate it and be very far ahead. Very far ahead. I think I let that happen and snuff that out. I think I'm okay with the Calder sitting in their hand. Like, I very much have a game plan here, and I would like to stick to that. I'm not going to snuff out the Stoneforge Mystic until my turn, because I don't control a swamp. And that's kind of important. Watery Grave. Yeah. 2 mana for a Strix. Draw a card. Nice. Take out a Stoneforge Mystic. Yeah, this feels nice. Play a White Plume. I would like to take the initiative. Swords Resolves. Wow, that's a weird one. That's a really weird one. I don't really want to counter that, but like my Force of Wills get shut off if I don't. So that probably means I have to counter it. I can Force Pitch Force, but then I'm so much worse versus White Plume, which I'm currently very good against. So I think I Force Pitch Murktide and keep Baleful Strix if I draw another blue card. I play Strix. If I don't, I hold Strix for Force of Will. That's annoying, but that's happening. Alright. So, oh man, I really want to high roll and play this. Any blue card or Thoughtseize makes this play very good. Oh, this is greedy. This is greedy. Nice. Happy with that. Bash in for 1 with Strix. I have a Plague Engineer that I can eventually use to kill Mother of Runes, or I can find the Virtue's Ruin. Okay. Okay. Do I just want to counter that? It's currently a 2/2. Will be a 3/3 on their side of the battlefield. I can have it on my side of the battlefield as at least a 4/4. Given where my life total is at and the fact that active Mother of Runes is here, I probably junk that. Alright, opponent is not pushing damage as hard as they could. See what I can set up here. Take another Baleful Strix as a redraw? Or just take another Ponder as a redraw? Take another Strix as a redraw. No shuffle. Batch. This one can be Underground Sea. Play the Strix. Oh, Murktide is quite good. So I have become the aggressor in a way that I wasn't really expecting. I think it's okay to go to 7. So fetch plus shock is 7. I think I reanimate to 4. This means that Mother of Runes can't force attacks on me because I just have creatures of too many different colors. And I think I kill my opponent in 2 turns with what I have here now. I may have gotten too aggressive with my life total, and I maybe should have waited till next turn on the reanimate to save 3 life. Also, this is probably a good opportunity to say, like, with how much I was wanting my opponent to just play an initiative creature, that probably makes me feel good about, this deck being called an initiative killer. So I have a very large Murktide Regent. I don't think my knight is attacking. I think I have to hold back knight and Murktide Regent now that my opponent has a large creature. Bam, bam, bam. There's 3 in the air. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's an 8/8 Murktide Regent. Just as a reminder, this sacrifices forest and plains. I can keep this for brainstorm, or I can play it out to be able to hardcast a Force of Will next turn. How many brainstorms are in my exile? No brainstorms in my exile. I don't know, stopping my opponent from playing a card next turn seems very important if my draw is Force of Will. I think I'm okay with this. Alright, Endurance. Would you like to Endurance me? You would like to Endurance me. Thank you. That shrinks my knight, but grows my Murktide. Let's see how bad this Knight of the Reliquary can do me. An Urza's Saga. I have 12 damage in the air. So that was done in upkeep, so Urza's Saga ticks up immediately. Oh, fuck. Oh, that's bad. That goes on Bird and gets a 3-for-1. What an absolutely devastating draw. I think that beats me. Like, I was going to have Knight of the Reliquary and 3 blockers held back. Oh, that was an absolutely devastating draw. Alright. Take the Cauldron that I know about. I have to hope my opponent messes up combat. Like, is that my out? If my opponent swings out with everything and I have 3 blockers, I take 2. I attack with Murktide Regent, and my opponent attacks with everything. I take 4 and die. Yeah, I think I have to hold back. I think it's just too obvious that the kill is there. Yeah, shoot. I think my opponent has a kill anyway. They have Urza Saga. I imagine that they have access to a Shadow Spear, and like Trample and Lifelink seems very strong here. Also might have some utility cards that are just very good. Yeah, Knight grows to a 5/5 because of the Urza Saga going to graveyard. I think I'm dropping this one. No trophy. Alright, where's Shadow Spear going? It is going to the Knight. Yep, so this is pro blue. Yep. Rough. So in order to survive this, both of these have to go here. So this has me taking 2 damage, but that is 2 more damage. So that means that I have to do that block in order to survive. So my board is clear. My opponent has like 6 creatures. Oh, I was so close here. I was so painfully close. I think I beat most of my opponent's draws, but that Plague Engineer was just too much. Like, that was a 3-for-1 in a time where I had a very strong board. Alright, final round. Hands an easy mulligan. I have no mana sources. Whereas this one's pretty reasonable. I will be keeping this. I probably throw back 1 mana source here. My Daze kind of works against me wanting to cast Baleful Strix, but I think when I don't know what my opponent is playing, I just have to keep the Daze. This turn 1 interaction. Dryad Arbor. I will snuff that out and just play a Baleful Strix on my turn. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and just like fetch and shock and just see what my Strix draw is on the very off chance that I change my mind about wanting to snuff that thing out, but it's so hard to imagine how my draw could change enough that I don't want to just like take out my opponent's turn 1 land. Alright, we're playing against elves. The counter spells are off. Rip Daze. Watery Grave is reasonable here. It lets me actually play out a Death Shadow this turn. Let's start here. Daze goes back. Reanimate may or may not be good. Wasteland is in the same boat. I'm playing Thoughtseize, and Well, I guess if I redraw one of these, I want to redraw Wasteland. Not actually a real question, and I'm okay redrawing the Wasteland to just kind of do my optimal thing in this turn cycle. All right, I'll take the Visionary. All right, I'm down to 9. Play a decent-sized Death Shadow. I get to poke for 1. If my opponent plays a non-basic, I can Wasteland it next turn. And I can reanimate an Elvish Visionary too. Alright. Well, it has played around Wasteland. I don't mind having access to it, though. Let's ponder. Grief is not looking great right now. I'm just going to shuffle that. Hello, Grief. Welcome back. Or more interesting a turn cycle from now. I have another black card. I'm going to go ahead and do a pre-combat reanimate to just take an extra draw and increase the damage that my Death Shadow does. I mean, I will make my land drop for this turn. This is an attack for 7. I don't think I want to reanimate the Dryad Arbor. Like, I can get a little bit more damage. I lose out on some flexibility. And I think I want to have that flexibility. For example, if my opponent goes in on attacks, I can block with an Elvish Visionary. Sure. Anyway, I can block with an Elvish Visionary and then reanimate that. Just physically do better things in combat. So my opponent now has a 2/2, so my Elvish Visionary is no longer an attacker. I think that's fine. I'm just going to die to this. I can't find something that interacts with one of my opponent's cards. But play Strix, draw a card. That's a Brainstorm. I will go ahead and just cast that immediately. Those cards are pretty awful. My opponent can just attack me with 3 6/6s, but they don't trample. I think I don't grief my opponent. I'll put back. I don't think I can realistically cast this anymore. So I think I put back like this and this. Some worlds where I end up trading with that in combat and Force of Will becomes live again. But I'm not super happy about what's going on here. Oh, that's so good. That saves the Allosaurus Shepherd when I go to no Cradle play. Well, I guess they don't have to go in super hard anymore. Wanted them to play out that Cradle. It was very good for them that they didn't. I guess let's ponder, looking for like a removal spell or something. That ponder technically looks at 2 cards, but I think I'm going to try to high roll here. That is a removal spell. And I can cast it. I think I do so post-combat, though. I think I go Death Shadow, attack in. The block is obligatory. My opponent will block and bounce. Yep. Okay, there is the bounce. So now I can actually just kill the Allosaurus Shepherd, so I don't have to worry about the overrun effect. I think I'm just into that. That turns Force of Will on for future turns as well. But I just think playing this game dancing around Allosaurus Shepherd the entire time is not going to be fantastic. Alright, this is going to be a bad turn for me. So, my opponent has Wirewood Symbiote. Oh, wow. So basically at this point, as long as my opponent continues to draw 1-drop elves, they just do their thing. Because Heritage Druid plus Nettle Sentinels is 3 mana. And then anytime you play specifically a green elf, you just kind of end up netting mana and drawing cards. That's real bad. Real bad. And Cradle is going to come down at the tail end of this. Yeah, I was planning on 2-turning my opponent with evasive creatures like Baleful Strix and Grief, but I imagine that I'm just dead this turn. Yeah, that is a green sun for 8, which is probably going to be enough considering that I am at 7 life. That is 20 incoming damage. Yeah, I am dead. Alright, I feel like I navigated that one okay, but that turn was brutal. Plague Engineer, great. Ratchet Bomb and Powder Keg, solid. Fatal Push and Grafdigger's Cage, okay. So I'm a lot less excited about Reanimate as a whole here. I'm probably going down on those. I can decide like how deep I want to go on going down on them. Sort of an awkward matchup in that like my Dazes and Force of Wills are solid when my opponent doesn't have Allosaurus Shepherd, and stone cold dead every time that they do. Like Daze and Force buying me one hit with a Murktide Regent is a big deal. But the things that I can reanimate from my opponent's side of the battlefield are pretty rough. I think I'm never playing Daze. That gets me 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't like how my deck lines up against my opponent's deck. Like, I hurt myself a lot, and my opponent is very good at, like, invalidating a Death Shadow attack with things like Wirewood Symbiote. So, yeah. I think I'm going to go down 1 Reanimator, 1 Force of Will. I'm just kind of, like, puzzling whether or not I want optimal Grief hands or whether I do want an extra Force of Will for stopping non-Allosaurus Shepherd hands. I'm going to assume that this is a keep. Grief's actually a little awkward. I kind of would like to just use Snuff Out. I will damage myself here. I'm going to Thought Seize my opponent and see if punching... Oh god, that is a good hand. So it has Wirewood, Elvish Visionary, as well as like Natural Order. I think I let my opponent play Wirewood on turn 1 and snuff it out. I think I take out Grist and try to find another discard spell or counter spell before Natural Order comes. I don't know that I'm going to just beat Grist generating a super large number of blockers and being a way for my opponent to kill Murktide Regent. And this potentially lets me play out the Grief a different way if I draw a new black card next turn. Cool. So Grief, exiling a Grief. I will be taking the Natural Order here. That's the card that I can't beat in the long term. I will Snuff Out for 4 life on the Wirewood Symbiote. This is actually 4 cards in Graveyard. I think this is a big enough Murktide Regent that I just pull the trigger on it. Watery Grave? Watery Grave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, turn 2, 2 mana, 5/5 flyer. Perfectly fair. And let's see if I can get 4 attacks in while otherwise keeping my opponent off balance. I honestly might not be able to. I have... oh, my life total. I don't think I cast that Thought Seize here. Yes? I think yes. I think I Fatal Push this turn. Cradle-based reasons. The Wasteland 2 down. Always draw the Brainstorm next turn. Right, Visionary's out of the way. Crash in for 5. Oh. Let's see how punished I get for not playing a Thoughtseize. Okay, cool. It just became an Elvish Visionary. That's totally okay with me. Let's start with the Brainstorm. I don't really want to Thoughtseize my opponent, but if there's like a Natural Order in hand, it's kind of necessary to. I'm going to kind of accept it. Take my 5 damage. Alright, opponent's at 10. See how good this Thoughtseize is. Are you about to become hexproof? Just getting a Dryad Arbor. Okay, I just played around a Natural Order. Cool. I believe I just Wasteland now. Take out the Dryad Arbor that my opponent just fetched. They can keep the Cradle at this point. Yeah, one damage is fine. If I kill my opponent next turn, I'm basically just looking for physically anything that can interact with them in any way to slow them down. Secondary threat is totally reasonable here. It means I don't get attacked and gives me some insulation if that Crater Hoof were to somehow get into play. Although I think if it gets into play, they just trample through me no matter what. Alright, game on the play is a lot harder. I think I'm okay with my 3 Force of Will configuration here. I think this is a keep despite the awkwardness. And we're going to see one of these Allosaurus Shepherd situations where how good this hand is fully dependent on whether or not my opponent has Allosaurus Shepherd. I think I'm just going to force this after my opponent has mulliganed. Gonna force that, pitching a Baleful Strix, and just see if I strand my opponent on mana. Like, if I let this resolve and then my opponent just plays, like, land. Ooh, nice. I think I thought Seas, rather than Wasteland. Not 100% sure about that. Okay, what am I most scared of my opponent playing here? In the short term, one of the 1-drops. In the longer term, Glimpse is a pain. I think I actually take their Green Sun. That develops their mana the most. And that's their current choke point. Elves doesn't actually have all that many mana sources, in kind of good news for me. I think I say no to these. And I don't necessarily have to Wasteland this turn. I'm just going to put more cards into my graveyard so that my Murktide is bigger next turn. Nope. Cage is great. Alright, yeah. So opponent missed on land drops, which is kind of huge. Let's do this. Fetch. I think I will shock. Go to 12. Nuke the whole graveyard for a Murktide. Grafdigger's Cage is good safety. I'll Wasteland my opponent next turn. I can kind of put off the Wasteland, I think, like once I present a 7-power creature. Metal Sentinel is fine. Urge Druid is fine. So this gave my opponent 1 mana for a turn. Again, I think that's fine with 7 power in play here. The Wasteland, take out Cradle, hit for 7. I don't know, maybe my play was greedy and I'll lose because of it. Like if my opponent randomly spikes a Cradle here, it's really bad, for example. So this is a Visionary. Gets them out of their mana bottleneck. And this could get bad. 3 mana. Wirewood into an Elvish Visionary, I assume. Alright, there's a bounce. Yep, there's the Visionary. And I'm essentially saying to my opponent, kill me next turn without the use of Natural Order. Which should be pretty tough. Because oh my god, what a draw. Put back a Murktide and a Snuff Out. Go to combat. Bash for 7. Opponent goes to 5. Underground Sea is still in my deck. Let me confirm that. Yes. Go to 8. Underground Sea. Plague Engineer on Elf. Yep. I am still naming Elf, despite the fact that, like, naming Wirewood Symbiote could be interesting. I don't think I Snuff Out for 4 life. I don't know, maybe if I Snuff Out Wirewood, there's just, like, no way that my opponent can do something that beats me. Yeah, I think that's true. Alright. Yeah, my opponent throws in the towel there. I think that decision is fine either way, though. Alright, this league was awesome. This deck is really, really good. Like, as far as overall thoughts on the deck list are, like, if you like blue decks, like, this feels like it's very much worth learning right now. Like, I got a 4-1, which was damn close to a 5-0, even considering how uncomfortable I was with, like, my matchup approach and sideboarding. And I very much feel the raw power level of this deck list, and I feel like I had a lot of agency, a lot of decisions that I could make. Like, my decisions mattered in meaningful ways. Like, it's not just like I have choices, but like it's choices that impact the game in ways that swing the game heavily. And like, you have these awesome, like, Grief reanimate opening hands. You have these Thoughtseize reanimate your card opening hands. You have, I'll just cantrip a couple of times in Murktide Regent with the counterspell backup hands. Like, this deck is really good. I didn't necessarily board in everything that I had access to in my sideboard throughout this league, so I didn't bring in the Court of Cunning. I would have brought that in versus, like, slower control decks. I'm not sure how I feel about that card, like, having not played it, but even some of the things that I didn't draw, like Powder Keg, Ratchet Bomb, Unlicensed Hearse, like, I'm very glad that I had access to those things. This deck gets a huge, like, thumbs up for me. I enjoyed this a lot. I guess one question I have is this better than some of the versions that have Douthie Voidwalker that I've been seeing running around?
and I don't know the answer to that. That would be something that I want to explore if I played this again. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I did playing it. If you did, please click the like button on the way out. It really helps out a lot. I hope you all have a great rest of the day. And remember, if you ever want to try out the deck list or get one of your own decks on the channel, all that information is available in the video description. See ya!